Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 320 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I am joined by not one, not two, but three other tanks. With me is Mark the Green Tank.
Hello.
Kellen the Red Tank.
Hello.
And Christina the Blue Tank.
Hello. Woo! I wanted to cheer after you said Mark the Green Tank, then I'm like, oh, then it gives it away. But I guess it was
you're not allowed
away.
to talk until
I'm
introduce
introduced.
you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who did you want to cheer
for
for when they were introduced?
I wanted to cheer for Mark.
Interesting, yeah.
specifically Mark. And this is a very special episode. We were all together. We had BarrageCon. We were all together in Las Vegas.
In Mark's
as
house.
a group.
And we played a bunch of games.
There it is. It is a bunch of games episode. We have nothing scheduled except every game that we played on this amazing
A
weekend.
full, detailed, minute-by-minute recounting of all the games that we played at BarrageCon.
Exactly.
We're not going to be talking about the incredible meals we had. That is saved for the bonus episode for patrons. It was a whirlwind of culinary delights. And that'll be talked about in the bonus
ate a
episode.
bunch of food.
We did. We literally ate a bunch of food.
But no, yes, we're going to be talking about all of the games that we played this weekend. We all had a lot of them. We're going to get right into it.
Well, before we do, a couple of things that we want to clarify. A, we're going to do this in chronological order, right? Is that what we agreed on?
Of course.
Okay, and then when we hit your game of the con, you have to announce that it's your game of the con, right?
How do you announce it? Is there?
I don't know.
Is there like
just
a
do your own thing.
celebratory?
Yeah, if you want to be celebratory, if you want to be morose, whatever you want to do. However you want to do it.
Morose. Yeah.
This was my game of the con. That's my morose voice.
Okay, so as long as we're agreed on those two things.
So yeah, exactly. That as long as we know that chronological order and you must make a fanfare for your game of the con, we are ready to get going.
Let's do it.
With Kellen.
So we started off with a little Japanese card game. It's just like yeah.
Just a cliche.
Yeah.
I actually wasn't even trying to start it in that sense. This is not the bad game Harvest that somehow they conned people into kickstarting again recently. This is, if you look for it on BGG, the name is in Japanese and then in parentheses it says Harvest. It is a very silly game where you are trying to get 3 in a row of the anthropomorphic. Are these vegetables anthropomorphic? They have eyes.
Are they anthropomorphic? Yeah, sure. They have faces.
What's the barometer?
VeggieTales.
No.
They literally look like VeggieTales.
These are way cuter than VeggieTales.
They are. But I mean, they're vegetables with faces.
Yeah.
And they're hella
Anthropomorphic,
Christian.
as previously. Okay. You have a 2x2 grid. You combine your 2x2 grid with everyone else's 2x2 grid, and you are trying to make 3 in a row. That could be diagonal or orthogonally adjacent. Now, but wait, you say you have a 2x2 grid, and you can visualize this as good as Neelan can. You say you must cooperate with others in order to score. So that means that if you put down 2 cabbages in a row in your garden, and then Neelan puts down a cabbage in his garden, and that connects, we all score points. This sounds very positive and happy. It's a little match 3 sort of cute thing. But there's a lot of buts in this game, which is that, A, once you have a card in your garden, you're actually allowed to play on other people's gardens. And that sounds nice. I could give Neelan some points when I'm scoring cabbages. No, some of the cabbages have negative points on them, which means I can get positive points for me and screw Neelan by playing cabbages into his garden. This is on the face of it, it doesn't appear like it, but it is a little bit of a negotiation game where you're essentially sort of saying, help me with the tomatoes, I'll hook you up with the corn, bro. And then it quickly devolves into, Mark, you me, I'm never working with you again in the garden, and sort of set the tone for the weekend. Harvest, how did we all feel about it?
This was a very violent game to start off the con. we were, I mean, I guess we play a lot of games this way, but we were not nice. This is like a cutesy little game. These little faces are so happy. And it was just cutthroat from the moment anybody placed a cabbage on the board. And, you know, some people made the grave mistake of refusing to work with me early on. And I think it's safe to say they paid for it.
I really enjoyed this. We were joking about these Japanese card games being cliche at this point, as often as we review them. And they tend to be always like pretty good. And some of the best cases, they are fresh. They seem like fresh perspectives and pack a lot of punch in these smaller games. And Harvest, I think, was among the best of that bunch. Just as we've sort of alluded to, I'm sure you could play this game casually, laid back, and have a lot of fun with it that way. And then, as we've mentioned, you can also play it really aggressively and cutthroat and mix in negotiation. And I had a really, really good time with this. It was a great way to start things off.
It was always fun, when two people were negotiating about how they were going to work together, and then you had a way to disrupt that before it got back to the players so they could do that. So you score some corn out of their garden. Reading through some of these comments on BGG, I love, like, all the people who hate it are calling it glorified tic-tac-toe. Like with Take That, like it's definitely like a Take That small card game of silliness, but it does not overstay its welcome, I think, as kind of a perfect 20-minute, 30-minute opener.
Yeah, God, calling it a glorified tic-tac-toe. I mean, it has tic-tac-toe in terms of 3 in a row, but that seems like really, really reductive. That is not what this game is.
That is not what this game felt like. I thought it was very, very fun. I think there's something nice about such a light, cutesy game having the potential to be aggressive because the stakes are so low. And so it can be a really fun place to play if you're not wanting to destroy someone's 3-hour game. You can just destroy their 20-minute.
Right. Absolutely, that's
game.
fair. That's totally fair. Yeah,
And it gives you a bunch of different ways to do it as well, right? Because it's like, other than just like giving someone negative points, you're either blocking up their fields or just negotiating with another player. So there's a bunch of different ways that the dynamic changes around the table, which is fun as well. Which is more than you would expect from 15-minute filler game. Cute, very cute,
very cute.
And that was Harvest.
Good job.
But that was what I was asked to do.
Yeah, you did it. You did it perfectly. You executed it flawlessly.
You're saying I didn't add any flair.
Didn't add any flair to it. Okay, so I peaked early in a couple of ways. One, Harvest was the only game that I won. I won Harvest, and then I didn't win anything else the entire BarrageCon weekend.
Is that true?
Two,
I'm not gonna. Let's not. Okay.
What?
Let's not talk about win rates.
What? Why?
Well, no reason.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, why is that, Kelly?
Why would we
No, because we just, that's not, it's uncouth,
Okay,
No,
well,
I see.
I have you down for more wins. I have you down for more wins, Christina.
For real?
Co-op win, yeah.
Yeah, Nekojima, there's only one loser.
Oh, yeah,
Nekojima
Nekojima counts.
Yeah. And
Oh,
Wilmot.
that's true.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't think that counts.
Okay, all right.
So the other way that I peaked early was that Fractured Sky was my game of the con.
Game of the con.
And that was game of the con. And that was the game that we played second. So not to say that the rest of the con was not incredible, because it was, but I was so pleasantly surprised and delighted by Fractured Sky. Fractured Sky is a bidding and bluffing game in a fantasy world, which I actually was very delighted right off the bat by the theme. There were a lot of things about this game that delighted me, but this board I thought was beautiful. The art was really pretty. I almost don't even want to tell everyone what not my favorite part, but like the most surprising and delightful moment of the game, because I feel like you have to experience it yourself. Okay, I'll tell you.
I know what it is.
It's Mark. Mark was teaching us this game, and he's like, okay, now we all have our ships. They're ships, airships. We have our airships that we get to, essentially, we're bidding with our airships, but our airships are hiding our bids. And Mark, this is the first thing he teaches us. He's like, take your airship and pick up your bid, and you place your airship. You have this like hidden player board with a 0 and a 0 and then 1 through 10 as far as your bids go. And they're little round discs that are the same size as the bottom of your airship. You bring your airship toward whichever bid you want to make, and it clicks on magnetically. And then you fly your bid over, your hidden bid, and you place it on the country island. What are these things called?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, your favorite
No.
Your
It's not
favorite
my favorite part of the game. It's
Your
not my
favorite
part
part
of the game.
of your game of the con was playing with fridge magnets.
No, not my favorite part of the game. I'm saying it was just so delightful. It was just such a wonderful moment of discovery that I had never seen in a game before. So you're essentially trying to win these different regions in this game by having the highest bid after doing a series of actions. So every round of this game, everybody starts out knowing one piece of information, which is one region that scores. And then the rest of the information is hidden unless you decide to pay to reveal that information. And so everybody on their turn is able to do these various actions, either placing their airship on a, magnetically connecting to their bid and then placing their airship on the region they want. They can spend their turn just paying money and peeking at information. There is a lot of information, especially more and more as the game goes on, because each round reveals another essentially like level of information. So each round there's an additional region that will score. So the game kind of has this built-in momentum. And so you're really deciding as you go through the round how much you want to bid on each area based on the very limited information that you have. You're trying to hide the hidden information that you have that you've paid to gain from your opponents. And you're really having to make these tough decisions because you obviously want to do more than you can do, especially once you have more money and there are more areas scoring. There are also secret objectives that you can peek at. So there's more and more secret objectives that are happening throughout the game. Well, each round has a secret objective that completes. And so you're really trying to decide, like, what can I actually win versus what are other people trying to win? What do they know? What do I know? And it's just great. I just had so much fun with this game, from the pure, like, silliness of it, like some of these moments, like the magnetic, and even just the names of the regions. You have, like, sinister spires, like they all use alliteration. Every single region uses alliterations. It's just like silly. The artwork is very playful. You're in the sky, like the theme I really loved.
What did you describe it as, Christina? Cozy fantasy?
Cozy fantasy.
Oh,
Yeah.
no,
Cozy fantasy.
no, God.
Board game edition.
Nealon, you're like, what a lovely concept. And I was like, are you kidding me? Cozy fantasy?
It is.
Worst concept.
I love that. Even though, like, there is some element of bidding and, like, sort of fighting over these areas, it's not like a war game. It's just a lovely setting. It's a lovely aesthetic. The pieces and the components kind of, like, sell the thing in such a lovely way. The production is off the charts excessive. And not excessive in a bad way, I would say. It's just... it's over and above what you would see from a lot of board games, but it kind of feels like it's all lovingly tied into the way that the game plays in a way that just feels fun to play with. It's fun to engage with.
Yeah, and I guess I should say at the end of each round, you are resolving each region. Everybody's revealing their bids, and it creates these really big moments where you thought somebody had bid something because of what you thought you knew they knew, and then it turns out they bid their 10, and you got screwed. You didn't get what you want. Like, it's just every single area resolves, and you're learning, like, oh my God, that's the one that scored. I thought it was that one that was going to score. So it's just a very high octane, high octane moments.
Yeah. There's also a lovely thing which happened occasionally, well, it happens throughout it really, where because at any given time, the way that the information works, when you gain information, you can choose to, like, share part of it with the rest of the team, like one small aspect of, like, a clue to what that information is. But also, like, there's a marker on each of these cards showing, okay, I know that Christina looked at this card earlier in the round. So you get to the end of the round and you look there and you see, okay, Christina and I are still the only ones that know about this, and you're both trying to decide when either of you is going to, like, pounce on that without giving it away to Kellen and Mark. And, like, that's just lovely. I love that.
Ivy Studios, who are the publishers of this, all their games have a lot of shared traits. One of them being, like, these over-the-top productions, and Fractured Sky is certainly no different. It as Christina sort of alluded to, like, the production is very, very lavish. Another aspect of their game design that I really appreciate is these full games like Moonrakers and like Fractured Sky. These are full games. They're not like fillers or anything. And yet the rules that you have to get through to get started are quite small. Like the rule book for Fractured Sky is just a couple pages long, and you can sort of dive in really, really quickly. So something I really appreciate about their games, and is great at like a con sort of thing where you just want to get going.
I don't know. I don't know whether I should just start voicing dissent all up and down the town, or
Helen hated it.
I just, guys, when, like, what's the equivalent? I don't always want to go to straight Marvel movies. It's like this game, from a production perspective, is like a 12 out of 10 or a 13 out of 10. And the art is cool. It's got, you've got...
Sinister Spires. I can't think of any others.
You've got like
Cozy Cove?
Cozy Cove, maybe.
Every little box they could check with you is checked here, like above and beyond. And the game is rated 7.5. So what is the tax for how pretty it looks? At least a point here. Like, this is a 6-ish ranked game. You guys are crazy.
Okay,
Why? And I think Mark is correct. Or he almost got there, but like, it's like there's something. The way that they design UI is very, very smart. In like that magnetic thing is not just a gimmick. It actually is like helping you understand certain parts of how the game works. Nealon and I like set up our player boards without any input from Mark and only got one thing wrong. And that's kind of crazy with the amount of different things we were having to sort of slot into our board. And all of that sort of design work, like they're thinking about it, which is really cool. So
what
anyway,
is bad
that
about the
sounded
game,
positive.
Yeah, what
didn't you like?
Game?
I think it's pretty daft to have like an engine builder where you can just sort of luck into upgrading your engine on the first turn based on super random information, and then it just careens out of control by the end of the game. It's like,
and I would agree with that. I do think that there are things that I don't love, and one of them is actually the objective system that Christina mentioned, for the reasons that Kellen just mentioned, especially in the early going. It kind of just sometimes felt that someone would luck into an early game victory point through no effort on their part. I would probably remove that objective system personally, but for a game that's as light as it is, like Mark described, like the fact that it just gets off the ground as quick as it does, I just found it very, very pleasant, very lovely.
yeah, it's like, if you had Curse Court and made it worse, or had Spectral and made it longer. Yay. Again, but you can, if you look at this on the table, it's like, oh my God, like, this is insane what's been done here.
For sure.
Yeah, I think we did all agree on some of the randomness bothered us. Even like lucking into a first round objective victory point when there were so few victory points in the game felt kind of bad. It felt like, well, I didn't deserve that, This
is what they're harping on, because I was the one who lucked into this first round.
No, I thought I did.
No, because not the round one. It was,
okay, well, I lucked into an early game victory point as well, and it felt kind of bad.
Let's all confess our sins. I think the TLDR that like will probably get through or will be abundant is, I think I've just had a very long year, and I'm not convinced I was in the headspace to enjoy any of these games. And that's not to say that they don't have good...
Well, that's something to look forward to.
I'm just being honest.
BarrageCon hot take.
I'm just being honest.
Didn't enjoy any of it.
No. The people.
The food.
The food, yeah, the food. The food, then the people, then the games.
And that was Fractured Sky, Game of the Con for me.
Next, we played a very small card game by the only true and living Dr. Rainer Knizia. This is called Penguin Party. Christina, unfortunately, did not play this with us. I think you would have liked this, Christina.
I'm sure I was sleeping. Was I sleeping?
Yeah, you absolutely were.
Every game that I missed, I was working. This was Friday. Still.
Oh, no,
I was working.
yes, that's
I was
right.
working.
That's right.
Okay. So I wasn't sleeping for all the missed.
So Penguin Party is a very simple card game. You have a deck of cards in 5 colors. There is nothing else about these cards other than 5 colors and lovely pictures of penguins on them. You deal a hand out to every player, and you play a card to the table every turn. What you are doing is collectively assembling a pyramid. So you're going to have, let's say 8 cards along the bottom row, 7 cards on top of that, with every card above 2 cards below it. But the restriction being that the bottom row is strictly 8 cards maximum. So once someone has built out the bottom row to 8, you can only go up from that point. And the other restriction being, if you do want to build up, then if you want to play a red card, for example, it has to be supported by either a red card on either side of the bottom, or 2 red cards. So these restrictions start to get quite funneled based on colors, because once you have like a red and a yellow card next to each other, only a red and yellow card can go above them. So you can easily imagine that you can quickly get to a point where blue is entirely blocked off. Like if there is no blue on the second row, you just can't play any more blue cards. And once you get to the point that you can no longer play a card, you're out. You get negative points for all of the cards left in your hand. Anyone that can finish out playing the rest of their hand can, and you score and you move on to the next round. And that's really all the game is. It's dead simple, but it kind of belies a lot of very clever thinking. It has that sort of trick-takery type thing of you looking at your hand at the start and being like, okay, what do I do with this hand? I have 5 blues, 3 reds, 1 green. I need to make sure that I'm building enough infrastructure for all these green cards in my hand and trying to bury blue quickly because I don't have any more blue. That means other players have a lot of blue. So there's some fun thoughts in there in how you're trying to construct this pyramid to like help yourself and hurt other players. Mark and Kellen, what do you think about Penguin Party?
I really, really like this. Like, there's not enough there to support like a full game, but as like a quick card game, this was fantastic. Like, I felt like I could teach this to anybody and play a couple hands of it one after the other. And I just thought it was just really, really interesting.
It is always the Reiner Knizia who makes a game, and then you're like, surely this has been a game for millennium. It could almost be like a domino type, you know what I mean? Like, not even necessarily like a card system, because you're not really playing it in any sort of card game way. We were all having such a grand, fun time playing Penguin Party until we realized that Neelan was card counting in this family fun card game.
Try hard.
Yeah,
Listen.
Try to
There
get
are
out
at
of
most
party.
We're just trying to have fun.
There are at most 20 cards on the table at any given time, and 7 in each suit. That's not card counting.
Kellen has had such...
That's just using common sense.
Neelan, Kellen has had a long, hard year. He doesn't even like board games anymore, and you have to try hard and just ruin his little bit of fun.
We're stacking penguins on top of each other, and I'm like, should I put the blue one there or the purple one there? And Neelan's over here with an abacus.
Yeah,
mathing out.
He's like, according to my calculations.
No, that's not even how it happened. We're halfway through game 2, and Kellen says, "Oh, I guess you could know how many of these are left." And I'm like, "What do you mean? How are you guys playing this any other way?" As if like I was the crazy one. Ugh.
Oh boy.
Penguin Party, great game.
Next up, Christina was still working, but we got a chance to play a game I think I reviewed on a previous episode of the podcast, San Marco, designed by Alan Moon and Aaron Weisblum. This is a area majority game with a I split you choose drafting system to it. The way it works basically is there are a couple places on the board, a map of, I guess, some part of San Marco, and then players take turns dividing 2 types of cards into 3 sets. The types of cards are action cards, which allow you to add pieces to the board, move pieces around, initiate a scoring, stuff like that, like basically like the dynamics of the game. And then the other set of cards is sort of like a timer. And once somebody's acquired 10 points or more of these timer cards, their round is over. So you are balancing offering good action cards to your opponents while adding maybe more of these timer points so that when they're making the decision which of these stacks to take, they might be intrigued by these cards that are, giving them an opportunity to score or add more people to the map. But when they take that stack, it might have like a high number of these timer points. And so that's the things you're considering when you're doing the I split you choose part of the game. And then the rest of the game is pretty straightforward, where players are drafting a set of cards. They're taking their actions, they're setting their timer points aside, and whenever a player plays a Doge card, which is one of the types of action cards, there'll be a scoring in that region, wherever the Doge token is, and the scoring is a simple area majority. Whoever has the most pieces gets the highest points, whoever has the second gets the second scoring, and you just do that for a number of rounds, and the game is over. There are a couple of action cards that involve the dice, or the die, I guess, since there's only one die, and it can be quite swingy in that way, in a way that I sort of think about when I think of like older Euro games that have like a harsh edge. I think this sort of falls in that bucket of games. This was a game from 2001. For example, there's an action where you select a region and you roll a die, and that many cubes are killed, and that many workers basically are killed from the region. And so, if you roll a 1, you're only taking out one person. If you roll a 6, it can be quite devastating. But there's also the fact that, like, if you have any workers in that region and the number is less than 6, you run the risk of killing your own workers. So a really sort of, again, pretty straightforward game in terms of a rule set with that die aspect to it that can be a little bit on the swingy side. It allows for like moments of excitement when people are rolling this kill die and you're trying to see how many people have been removed from the map. A game I've played before and enjoyed. I wonder what you guys thought of it.
So it's interesting, right? Because we went and looked. It appears that this is pretty close to the modern I Split You Choose, the OG of this mechanism. You know, some Magic the Gathering could maybe lay claim to it in a war game, but war games aren't board games, so this is the birthplace of it. And what was so striking was that I actively hated the turns where I had to split and you guys got to choose. Like, I always felt like I was myself, like, every time. And that's kind of the hallmark of good I Split You Choose. I was like, no one would dare Split You Choose like this now. You know, you think Mike DeLisio's making I Made You a Mixtape with this level of harshness. And so that was cool. And then the other thing was like how many little things reminded me of El Grande in a positive way. You know, like I love area control where you can score part of the map, like if you choose to go for it. So those sort of Doge cards, which again, I don't know why they're Doge. It has nothing to do with Dogecoin, which is what I wish it was. But like, it's like, oh, I want to score that region now. And it's fun because you can sort of get an advantage in a region and score it right now, knowing you're going to lose it later, but who cares because I've scored it right now. Similar to, you know, some of the things that you can do in El Grande. And so the sort of tempo of the game being replaced by your bids in El Grande, and in this one, it's like, how many of those points do you want to take on until the round ends? So I liked this. I did not love it, but I can see why it's a classic for a reason.
Yeah, I definitely had the same reaction to the turns where I was doing the splitting, where it didn't feel fun to me. And that's not because the mechanic was bad or anything, but like, I would do it, I would agonize over it, and I would immediately realize how stupid I was for doing the thing I did. And it's just like, that was my reaction to every turn I was splitting, and that just felt bad.
And it's not hard, right? Because once someone is then choosing, they're choosing this pile or that pile, and it's kind of pretty easy to run out what your turn would be from that perspective. So like, for that person, it's really easy to upstage you, you know, and like pick something that you didn't anticipate. I don't know.
So that was San Marco, and then we followed that up with a game of Ego. Speaking of the...
And I returned from working.
That's right. Yes, it was the triumphant return of Christina. This is another Reiner Knizia game. This was a prototype that was sent to us by Bitewing. The Kickstarter is coming up. And Kellen, I believe, or Neelan, one of the two, you both have played this before, and one of you reviewed it in a previous show, right? I believe that's true.
Yes, we covered it on the pod. We played it on Before You Play's YouTube channel.
That's correct. Yes.
In a playthrough video.
So by all means, go ahead and check that the video, the Before You Play video. But it was Christina and my first time playing it. I was pleasantly surprised. The one thing that concerned me a little bit going into it was, although this is a remake of a previous Knizia game, Beowulf, which I also have not played, you guys mentioned that it had sort of like a Taj Mahal-y sort of vibes, and that is one of I know it's Neelan's favorite Knizia. It's one of my least favorite Knizia. So I was a little worried about how it would strike me going into it with the Taj Mahal mechanisms in it. But I found myself very, very pleasantly surprised. I can see the Taj Mahal like lineage, but it's not necessarily... I guess I feel like Taj Mahal is more punishing that I'm comfortable with in that type of game for whatever reason. I don't know. I just haven't had any great plays of Taj Mahal. But this was like and I'm sure, again, you mentioned it before, but like a collection of sort of mini games with Push Your Luck being a sort of like through line in all of them. And I really enjoyed it. Bunch of fun little games, and each one had like different considerations while having the, again, through line of knowing what games are coming up in the future and knowing that your hand of cards was going to influence how you played each of them. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really loved this too. I was so surprised even just like seeing the setup of it, because it's just these like, 6, 7, 8 different small boards. And they're just all placed in a specific order, and you're moving through them. And it just was so unique. Like, just everything about it felt so unique to me. And yeah, I agree. It was just like these little mini games, but you're constantly looking ahead, like 3 games ahead potentially, to see like, okay, well, I'm going to get money there, and then I'm going to need this specific card 3 games from now, but then 2 games from now, I'm going to need this other thing, but I'm going to have to sacrifice this. You know, you're having to look ahead, make all these decisions. It was very challenging. I was trying to play the game where I obtained 0. What are the red tokens called?
Offense.
0 offense tokens. I was like, I am just gonna, because if you end the game with 0 offense tokens, you get 20 points, which was huge in this game. And I was just like, that's it. I have to make it through without getting any offense tokens. It turns out you can't really do that. There are times where you just have to like at least temporarily take on offense tokens. And I didn't really discover that until too close to the end of the game. So I think that's where I went wrong. But anyways, it was just this very fun system of making these hard decisions about how much to take on, how much to push your luck. It was very fun, very unique.
It does do the thing that I really like from Taj Mahal, where like at the start of the game, you have the entire arc of the game laid out in front of you. So like the most try-hardy version of playing this is looking at every auction that's coming up and being like, okay, I want to make sure I have this amount of cards for this time, and then going like leading all the way until like the end, like mapping out your entire path and obviously pivoting as you go. But it does just bolt on like a lot of silliness in like the risk mechanism, which is fun. It's just good fun.
I don't feel like it really encourages that, though. Like, I don't feel like, and maybe I'm misremembering how you get cards, but it's like, I don't think you have enough early chances to get cards to be like, I'm going to get the card that I need in the last board of this game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're probably not like acquiring stuff for the last rounds of the game early on, but at least you're able to like plan
ahead.
for it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whatever you were doing, Christina, it was way better than what Neelan was doing, because I'm looking at the scores and he could have used
terribly.
He could have used those 20 points, I'll tell you.
I feel like I got second place in several games, but I did not win any others, as I mentioned.
And so that was Ego by Reiner Knizia.
So next we played Barony, which Mark has spoken before on the podcast, and we were all eager to learn. And this was my game of the con.
Oh,
Game of the
my
con.
Gosh. I was sleeping during this one, unfortunately.
I was going to say, it's a bummer that you missed this, Christina. I'm not entirely sure that you would have loved it as much as I did, but I think you would have appreciated at least some of it for sure. So the gist of Barony is that you start the game with 3 cities, you have a bunch of knights, and every turn is a choice between moving a couple of your knights across the board. There is a map that's laid out of like a bunch of hexes sort of placed randomly with a bunch of terrain types, and there are movement restrictions associated with all of that. You can block other players' knights either by having 2 pieces on the same hex or having a piece on a mountain and stuff like that. And it's this game of increments, moving your knights slowly across the landscaping, converting those knights into villages, and then turning those villages into cities. When you do all of these things, as you're creating villages, you're acquiring resource points based on where those villages are located. So like if they're on the plains, that's more valuable than creating a village on the mountains, for example. So you're incentivized to get your villages out in like good terrain while trying to blockade where other players are going and stop them from invading your villages and stealing those resources back from you. The way that the scoring works is really interesting. Like the scoring board confuses things a little bit, but basic gist is you need to convert 4 sets of 15 points. So some mix of those 15 resource points you're getting from creating villages, you can turn in 15 of those to just get up straight victory points. If you do that 4 times, you trigger the end of the game. And the other way to get points is by turning your villages into cities. So some combination of that is going to lead to your scoring. But what is most important is like kind of the tempo considerations of when you're going to choose to end the game, when you're going to move a knight to create a village. Is Kellen within 2 moves of being able to take that village from me before I can defend it? It is very deterministic. It is a little bit abstract feeling. Kellen described it as chess-like at some points, and I think that holds pretty true. It has this very procedural thinking process behind it of, okay, in 2 turns, I can get to here. Kellen won't be able to get to there. Kellen is probably going to be moving his piece to over here, so I'm going to have to find a way to counteract that while moving my pieces. I'm going to set up things that I'm going to be able to like turn into points before Kellen is able to do anything about it. It's a lot of that sort of thinking, but there is no luck in this game. There is some initial setup stuff that seems quite important in terms of where you place your starting cities, and then the rest of the game sort of just resolves very deterministically from that point based on like the turns you're taking. I thought this was excellent. It kind of starts off feeling very freeform, but the board starts to get very, very restricted as the game goes. So you're just making these desperate land grabs for the last few valuable hexes that will get you those high point resource tokens. Yeah, Kellen, this was the first time you had played this, is that correct?
Yeah, I've held on to this game for like 5 years on my shelf of shame because Marc Andre is the king who brought us Splendor. So he just knew he had another banger in him. You know what I mean?
That's right.
No one?
Wait, what? I don't get it.
Oh, right. You call them sausages.
Is that where we're going with that?
Is that what you were waiting for?
I don't know. I just thought someone would
Do you
react.
want somebody to say in the mouth?
No, I just
That's what you wanted?
I just wanted a reaction. No one, y'all just looked at me. And I think the only thing I would say is that this was a really great first impression for me. I really liked the early game and the mid game a lot more than I liked the late game. I would say that I can't remember the exact word you said of abstract presenting or abstract. Like, I think it's like literally an abstract area control game that does a really good job marrying thematic elements to the abstract. So again, we can define what's abstract and what's not.
No, I think that's a good take.
It's like a lot of the decisions came down to, okay, Mark is one move away from getting me there, but I've got 2 moves on him. I'm threatening his this there and that there. So if he goes there, I'll go there, then he'll go there, and then like it felt almost like literally like chess when you have a pawn that is pressing on a sort of a trap that's going to unwind and go boop 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 boop, and then you're going to be a little bit ahead of that person. But really snappy, I think, is like definitely the upside here for me.
For sure. Like one of the questions I was asking myself is like, how much complexity can you add to an abstract game before you can no longer like call it an abstract game?
Yeah.
And this does feel like maybe one notch past that, but it did remind me, and I remember saying this, of one of my favorite games. Like there's a little bit of Blue Lagoon in there where like you are setting up moves to like grab something and then very specifically timing, okay, like I know when Kellen is one move away from this, that's when I need to activate and grab this before it's too late. Meanwhile, you're spinning up threads in other directions and you're watching Mark as he's encroaching on that thing. And like, I just loved that feeling of just keeping your eye on a bunch of different places and trying to time everything just right so that you can get stuff without having it taken from you.
Definitely.
Yeah, great game. That was Barony.
I think, interestingly enough, we played Barony and then a new game, Rise and Fall, by Christoph Bohringer. I don't know if I'm going to say his name right. This is the king that brought us Archipelago, one of my top 5 favorite board games ever. And this was a Kickstarter that just recently delivered. But it was, in many ways, similar sort of hexagon grid. Anyway, there's a lot to sort of unpack together. Rise and Fall was my most anticipated game for us to play. It is essentially a Civ-like experience. You start the game by building the world. You are gods. Actually, it's unclear if you're gods, but you start the game like before the world, and then you make the world together, starting with the water, then with the plains, then with the forest, then with the mountains, then with the glaciers. And this is all really, really 3D. You know, like things are going up and up and up, which has some gameplay mechanisms because there's this idea of the cliffs where you can only go up 1 level versus 2 unless you have sort of special pieces. So we spent all this time building the map together, and then we started placing cities and nomads around the board. The entire game revolves around this card system. There are only 6 cards in the base game, and every time you play a city card, your one city card, all of your cities get to act. And on that card, there are 6 different actions that your cities can take. When you play your nomads card, all your nomads get to act. And so there's a really nice tempo to everyone setting down one card, everyone flipping it over together, and then in turn order, you're just sort of using all of your pieces of that type. It's very interlocking, and so without it in front of me right now, I probably couldn't do it justice, but the nomads sort of are your pieces that move across the board and expand out your reach, so they're able to get resources in the mountains and in the forest, but they can also turn into cities. And by turn into cities, we mean settle cities, just to be clear. And then there are churches that can tithe people and can convert enemy units into your units. And then there are a couple specialty units. There are merchants who are good at trading and getting money. There are ships that are good in the ocean because they're the only ones that can be in the water. And then there are mountaineers, which are better at traversing and can be the only people that get up on glaciers. All of this, like, what are we doing? What are we in service of in Rise and Fall? A couple things, the biggest of which is area control. That is a very simple system. It's the amount of pieces that you have in a region, and that region is worth how high it is physically, multiplied by the amount of territories it has, meaning a mountain plus glacier region is the most lucrative region, and so you're looking at who's ascending upward in the world to get to that region and how many pieces do they have. There's a race for trophies who can build all of their unit types of one type. And then perhaps the most weird or the most interesting system is this idea of decline, which is that anytime someone claims a trophy, you actually lose one of your cards and have to buy it back. Meaning you could get in a scenario where you literally lose the game. If you go down to only having one or two types of units, you only have two cards in your hand, which is really fun from a tempo consideration because that means you're using those units more often. But if someone gets a trophy or if someone gets two trophies and you don't have the money, you literally could be out of the game, which feels really spiky and weird. There were a lot of things about this that felt weird. Rise and Fall, where are we at on this, folks? We've thought about it. We've ruminated on it. Mark, it was your game of the con, right?
It was actually, it's close to my game of the con. I will say that, yeah, it's funny you say, like, we ruminated, we thought about this, because this is probably the game of the convention that I've thought about the most since we've played it. I think that we would clearly have played things differently on a second go-around. You know, there's a lot, I think, that we learned about the scoring dynamics and the playing dynamics that would really serve us in a more optimal play the second time around. And I'm sort of going to be speaking out of two sides of my mouth here because I think that this game, there's a ton to like about this game. And I do like it. I think I definitely fall on the side of liking this game. The thing is, this seems like a game, and again, I've already alluded to this, that would really, really be improved by multiple plays. I think playing this multiple times, there'd be a lot of strategy to unlock, a lot of things to see, a lot of different paths to potentially go down in terms of like how you were going to play it. And also, it is relatively quick for as big of a game as this is, like both in terms of like the weight and in terms of like the size of the game, the physical size of the game. It does accelerate. The end does accelerate. So you start playing it and you think you're in for like a 3-hour game, and then all of a sudden the pace starts picking up and you're at the end of the game. And I really, really like that. The problem is that the setup is, for as like sort of fun as the setup is, the setup does strike me as, you know, going to be taking some amount of time because you're creating this entire 3-dimensional like space that you're playing on, and that's going to take some amount of time. And again, sort of a contradiction, there's a lot of units that do a lot of different things, but each unit on its own is like pretty simple to explain. But it's just the you know, abundance. It's like all these little rules and little things that each unit can do. It's sort of like on their own is pretty small, but added up can be quite daunting to try to keep in your head. And there's a lot of times, at least me, I was thinking like, oh wait, how do I convert a unit to this? Or how does this unit get onto the board? There's a lot of things like that. I think that would, again, ease quite a bit with multiple plays. And if this was a game that was easier setup or shorter or a little less rules heavy, I would think that it would just be like way, way, way high on my list. Like it might be like one of my favorite games of all time. As it is, it currently falls a little short because I'm just worried about the ability to get it to the table over and over again, which I think it deserves and needs. But I did enjoy quite a bit of it.
Yeah, I really struggled with this game. To kind of add on to what Mark said about the rules. I think I spent the entire game being like, wait a minute, okay, I know which of my units can turn into a city. Like, okay. And then I have to like go through and like you have different piles of cards. Like you have your active hand, you have your discard pile, and you have cards that aren't out yet. And so you're just like constantly kind of looking at like those are your reference cards. So you're like looking at and like, oh, I'm like reminding myself, okay, that's how I do that. And then I set it down and then I'm like, wait, but how do I do this other thing? And then I'm picking and shuffling through my cards again. And I spent the whole game doing that. I am a person that is not very good at like learning rules super quickly on the first game. So this is, to Mark's point, I think it's very hard for me to assess without having multiple plays. I was so excited for this because I love Archipelago so much. And even the setup of it was just like very exciting because it's beautiful and it's fun to kind of make these, and to us, they were non-strategic decisions on where to place these different pieces and how to build this world. And future plays, you definitely would be trying to very strategically place that, which I think could also be kind of a downside of the game, is that you could just see this taking forever, like the setup itself just taking forever because people are so almost analysis paralysis over like, wait, but if I move this here and I can boom, you know what I mean? And so I don't know that I currently, even after ruminating on it, I don't know that I currently have the desire to put in the games that I would need to be able to actually play it in a fluid, fun way, because it was maddening for me. The whole time I was struggling and frustrated.
Yeah. And I know that someone is going to reply to what I'm about to say by countering this exact sentiment, but like I also question like how long it would take even to internalize all of those interactions with those units, right? Like this becomes this can only move over this is what you need in terms of resources to do this. Like it's
Nomads
not just about
can only turn into boats on plains, Neelan.
Exactly.
And mountaineers pay different resources for cities than nomads,
right?
Because
and
that
mountaineers
makes sense.
can't build on some terrain versus what your nomads can. Like there are so many little finicky things to this that I want someone to tell me, oh yeah, no, I had no problem like memorizing, internalizing it after like game 2 or 3, because like kudos to you. That doesn't seem like something. So that's
just about
which is actually something I was going to say. Like, why is there not like a flowchart reference included in this? It seemed insane to me that just wasn't a basic requirement that would ease everyone's like apprehensions with all those interactions. I'm kind of also in the awkward position of feeling like this is a game I could love if I got over that curve, but it just seems so daunting, like Mark said, to get to that point. I am intrigued enough to want to play it again, maybe at 2 players, but I just don't know when that would be.
Yeah, I think I liked it the most maybe while we were playing it, but there were many moments where I didn't like it. I have some concerns about how the end game triggers and your ability to control the end of the game and how important the timing and tempo is of when those trophies are collected. Sort of situation where the second someone collects the 4th trophy, and if this 4-player game, the game ends that round. And so many of the points are in the area control. I was just sort of ruminating, wondering if, now that we know, would we attempt to make a world that had less points available in any one region, right? Or maybe if you're the kind of guy who wants a ton of conflict, you're trying to make one big region in the center of the game so that that's sort of forced. So there is some strategic implications to how the world looks, which is cool. And it's also an interesting game that I think will be palatable to many because it's not super conflict heavy. In fact, the only conflict is the oppression of the church converting other players. Other than that, you're not attacking. There's like literally there isn't a combat system in the game. There's a lot of
blocking though.
There's only conversion through God.
There's a lot of blocking.
Yeah, the blocking is...
You got blocked a lot?
I got blocked constantly.
Yeah,
but it was because I was very delayed and my engine was very delayed. And so by the time I figured out how to do what I wanted to do, I couldn't do it.
I mean, I felt that blocking quite a bit.
Yeah.
I actually never did. I think I was doing the blocking because I went very nomad heavy and had just a lot more units on the board. I got 2 trophies, meaning I had a lot of units on the board before anyone else sort of did. I underestimated God, Mark.
The last thing I will say about this is I do think that there is a lovely, like, free-form nature to this, where it kind of feels like, am I going to go mountain lions this time? Am I going to go merchants? Am I going to go churches? Like, there is a lot of different builds, and it's not very clear that all of the ways that those are entirely known by the community, the way that they all interact, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of ways that different games could play out that is interesting, is very appealing, but it also makes it quite daunting in terms of a skill ceiling.
And it also feels like there may be some sort of scripted openings that would
Possibly
be just much more efficient and almost Splotter-like or Food Chain Magnate-like in that way, where it's like, hey, don't do this or you're literally out of the game. Good luck, have fun. That is Rise and Fall. We played it 4-player. You can buy 2 Rise and Falls and play it 8-player. What do you think about that, guys? That's
probably what we did wrong, actually.
Yeah, we did play with enough people. It's such a big box for even 4 people that I'm just like, can you imagine doubling it? It's crazy.
All right. Next, we are really taking a turn. We are going to talk about Wilmot's Warehouse, which is a cooperative memory and storytelling game. So this, I will not bury the lead. I love this game. This was so much fun. I was scared when I heard that it was a memory game, but the storytelling part of it kind of makes up for all of the challenges that memory games have. So this game,
Christina, I'm going to hop in real quick to say that this was my game of the con. I would never have guessed if you told me beforehand. This was my game of the con.
Wow. Neelan, do the sound.
Game of the con.
Wow, I would not have guessed that, Mark.
Yeah,
I'm
neither
surprised but happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Wilmot's Warehouse, you are spending the course of a week filling this warehouse. You're filling Wilmot's Warehouse. And the way it works is that each day starts with a sort of rule. And so you reveal the rule for Monday, and it's just making it more challenging, essentially. It's something like you're not allowed to talk during this round, which is the day, the stack of cards in this day, or something like that to make this day more challenging. And what the day consists of is each player takes a turn revealing a square tile, and the square tile is a very abstract image, and they have to decide, or together you can all decide, where does this square tile go? Where does this image go on the board? The very first one must go in the middle. And so you have no choice in placement there, but you have to kind of start the story, because the only way that you are going to remember I don't know how many you place. How many do you place in this?
It's like 35.
35? Okay. The 35 tiles that you're going to be placing throughout this game, the only way you're going to remember where they are, because as you might have guessed, you have to flip them over so that you do not see the image when you place it in the warehouse. The only way to do that is to kind of create this elaborate story that builds on itself. And so the first person, reveals a little square tile that has a weird squiggly line and says, this is an ocean wave, and the ocean wave must start in the center because of the flood, so whatever the story is, you start the story, you place it in the center, the next person reveals their tile, and it's another image, and how can we connect this new weird image to this ocean wave? And then it just keeps going. Every day has a stack of tiles and the rule, like I mentioned. And so some days are much, much more challenging than others. There's, another example of a rule is only the person whose turn it is can actually look at the tile, and they can only say one word, but then the other players have to decide where to put it. So fun little rules like that change the game every time. And once you have placed all of the tiles for the whole week, then your job is to take this stack of smaller or thinner cards that are replicating all of the images, and you essentially just have to go through all of these as quickly as possible and place them on top of the face down tile that you've put in the warehouse, and hope that you're putting them in the right place as you recreate this warehouse story that you've told. And it's a time thing. If you can do it in a shorter time than your previous time, then you win. What did everyone think? Obviously, Mark, game of the con.
Yeah, I mean, if you had told me before we started playing games that a memory storytelling game would have been my game of the con, I would have never believed it, especially if you showed me the other games you're playing, because we played a whole bunch of really fun games. But I was just so charmed by this. In fact, Roselle, who's not a board game player, before you guys all left, I wanted to make sure to get a game of it with her because I thought she would enjoy it as well. It's such an easy game to get people to play. You're joking the entire way through as you're building the story. Like one of the games we had, the first one was like a lipstick. We agreed it was like a lipstick thing, and then the next one was a wavy line. And we said, okay, that's the lipstick being smeared. And then we had something that we could argue was marbles, and we're like, hey, the marbles made the car or whatever she was in, swerve, and that's why the lipstick was smeared. And we had this just elaborate thing, and it has to keep building on itself, and the way it evolves is just so fun. I had a great time with it.
Did you like playing better with me or Roselle?
I'm not going to answer that question.
I think this would have been my game of the con had I not already played it before.
Yeah.
I think this is excellent, and it strikes me as one that you want to play 4 or 5 times with a group and then show it to other people, which is not a knock on a party game. It's one I think I've already ordered it actually for work. I think it'll be a good game for colleagues. Actually, though, it's going to have to get a lot more safe for work than the clues that Christina gives.
What?
There is a whale. That's all I'll say.
The whale? The whale was just injured. Okay.
It is rapidly becoming in the realm of games like The Mind or Werewords, where it's such a good gimmick and it's so simple that I just want to show it to as many people as possible because it's a good advocate for how weird and cool modern board games can be, and in a way that I think a lot of people that don't play board games might be surprised by, of just like, wow, that was really simple. We didn't spend half an hour learning rules, and we had like an experience that I've never had playing a game before. So just a really good achievement in that regard.
It's so creative too. It's just like a chance to literally make up whatever comes to mind, and like anything goes, and you don't expect these stories to stick, but they do.
Yeah.
And like, I remember both of the stories, both of the games that we played, and it's great. And you can see how if you are playing with the same group multiple times, you would kind of develop these inside jokes that would carry over from game to game.
Mark, just to call back for what I feel like was the thing I heard you say the most, I do feel like you cannot play this game with because I do feel like it would have a huge quarterback problem. If one person wanted to do it, they could completely derail the hell out of this.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, in the back of my mind, every time a co-op game came up on the first 150 episodes, it was you debating whether it had a quarterback problem.
No,
Maybe that's
true.
not
You're
even
100%
how how those episodes happened. It's just my memory of those episodes.
No,
is
yeah.
being like, well, there's a quarterback problem here, everybody.
That's true. That's 100% true.
And that was Wilmot's Warehouse, Mark's Game of the Con.
So one of, I guess, do we talk about the Sacred 8 at all here? One of my Sacred 8 games that you may recall us talking about a couple episodes back was Tiny Laser Heist. This was a game that I picked up on a whim on Kickstarter. It was incredibly silly. It is a dexterity game that has shades of kind of like an I'm the boss negotiation to it. So every round of the game, you're going to choose a jewel that you're going to try to steal from this elaborate structure. It is a giant plastic frame, let's say half a meter by half a meter on every side. It has 4 jewels in the middle of the board that have padlocks on top of them. And you are trying to, with a single plastic hand at the end of a rod, get these padlocks off of jewels, move them to a pedestal in order to claim them as the mission. Now, that's really hard to do. In fact, I would say impossible to do with one tiny plastic hand. So you're going to have to negotiate for someone to come on that mission with you. So you pick a jewel, you find someone that can help you out, you work together to clasp these silly plastic hands together, move padlocks around, move the gem to the pedestal without tripping over lasers or running out of time. It is an incredibly dumb, incredibly silly dexterity game. I think it has a lot of problems that became very apparent very quickly, but it's just goofy enough and just silly enough that I had a good time with it. What do you guys think of Tiny Laser Heist?
Very silly, very fun. I loved the hand, the stick with a rubber hand at the end.
My God.
I just wanted... I was really slapping people with it. I wanted to play Happy Salmon, but with the hands. You know what I mean? Nobody wanted to do that though with me. I think our game kind of devolved a little bit, where at the beginning it was just like riotous. And like I was trying to convince Kellen to go on a journey with me where I got all the money, and it's like kind of promises of future, like I'll help you next time, but I get all the money for this one. And then he came in and he was not going to play in good faith. So we were just like yelling at each other and laughing.
It's a competitive game.
Yeah, but it was like, you help me this time, I'll help you the next time. Like, remember you scratched my cabbage?
Oh, yeah, with the hand.
Yeah. The cabbage was
it's like
harvest.
Imagine someone on their deathbed, okay? And then you're like, hey, Kellen, you're 95 years old, but you know what I would love to do with you is like play Jenga with you one last time. You know, these are like my grandkids, and my hands are shaking. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And then I just fall over it's like literally I could not even play the game Tiny Laser Heist. I was so bad at holding up gems in conjunction with someone else. It was like so ludicrous as to be just like, I literally like at one point was questioning whether I should just like go not play, because I literally could not help anyone. And it's a shared, it's like Neelan needs to team up. Everyone tried to team up with me out of pity. Right? Everyone would rather be on that team with someone else. And I just like could not physically figure out how to pick up these gems. That's how it went for me.
Even though you initially thought you could do it by yourself. He was like, I'm not bringing anyone. I'm gonna do this all by myself.
And also, I should remind people, try to suggest that I was the problem in our failed mission.
After my first failed mission, you can't fault me for that. I needed to get on more missions. I knew.
It highlights, I think, a lot of problems with less refined dexterity games, I would say, which is to say that like it feels very obtuse at first, but once you got the hang of it, it just kind of felt like it didn't quite cohere as a game. Yeah, I don't know. I think that this game has a lot of issues. I think that everything about the negotiation component is very dumb and may as well not be there. And it kind of felt like it ran its course.
I actually like that part. I actually like the whole like who's the boss aspect of the who can help me on this mission. I mean, I think maybe it wasn't tuned well enough, but I like the introduction of that system into it. I also agree that it sort of like didn't in the end sort of failed as a whole as a game. I was really excited for this, and it sort of was my disappointment of the con, if we're gonna start doing that.
Yeah, I would agree. It was definitely my biggest disappointment. I wish it was better, and I could see a world where that negotiation thing works slightly better with more people. But when it devolved into like which person of these three am I going to take with me, it just felt kind of completely
agreed
arbitrary. But that was Tiny Laser Heist.
We followed that dexterity game with another one I've talked about previously on the show, Nekojima. This is the one about stacking electrical poles and putting cats on the poles, and on your turn you roll 2 dice. They indicate where on the map you have to place your telephone poles, or your electrical poles, I guess it is, electricity poles. And if you roll daggers, your opponents get to tell you where to place the poles. And then you keep doing it until somebody messes up and all the poles sort of collapse in on themselves. I was the person who messed up in our game. I was the one loser, everybody else won, so there's proof that everybody had at least one win at BarrageCon, because I was the one losing that game. This game felt a little, I don't know if I was swept up in the emotion of BarrageCon or what it was, but this felt a little plainer in this play of Nekojima. I remember thinking it was a little more exciting, or I had just better experiences in the past than this one. Maybe we were so down from previously playing Tiny Laser Heist that it made us sick of all dexterity games. But I thought this play of Nekojima was all right, if unremarkable.
Maybe we were too full.
Could have been. Again, we ate a bunch of food, and we might have just been
a bunch of food
up for dexterity games. But that was Nekojima.
I think my TLDR is I do not have a game that I can give Game of the Con to, but in total Kellen fashion, I can give worst Game of the Con, which I will award to Bottle Imp, which is a trick-taking game that I had wanted to play for many years, and a new edition came in stock, or was Kickstartered, and so I bought it, and I'm the idiot who somehow the Kickstarter didn't deliver quick enough, so I forgot I had Kickstarted it, so I bought the retail version of the new version, and then the Kickstarter of it arrived, revealing that you had, in fact, Got it. So now I have 2 copies of Bottle Imp, my worst game of BarrageCon 2024. This is a trick-taking game, and I do want to say, like, if you look on BGG, it's best at 3. Only play at 3. You should not play at other player counts. We played it at 4. I think if a trick-taking game cannot work at 4, we have a huge problem. So there's my upfront. But the game is at least an interesting idea, which is that there's a Bottle Imp at the start of every round. It has 19 points. If you ever play under 19, a card, then you actually take the Bottle Imp and win the trick. Otherwise, it's just the highest card played over 19. But what happens is if you are the last player with the Bottle Imp, hot potato style, you actually don't score any positive points. You only score negative points for the hell. What was it? The hell trick? The Hell's Basket. That was the best part, is
the devil's hand.
Stuffing the devil's hand full of stuff. And so there were some interesting considerations. You did not have very many cards with which to maneuver. I thought your hand count was too low. It's also super weird where it's like you need to card count, which is fine in a trick taker. That makes sense. So they give you a little player aid, but it's sort of like, all the cards are red in 1 through 7, except for 3 and 6, which are blue. And so, like, just really arbitrary numbers that you have to sort of remember that it's like, okay, there might be 1 blue that's lower than that here, but it might be in the devil's hand, and, you know, or maybe it got blown somewhere else. So just one that I felt almost no agency around and had multiple hands where I just felt like I wasn't leading, the hand played itself, and then I either got or I got a lot of points. What did you guys think about Bottle Imp?
I did think there were a lot of really fun considerations. I mean, and we kind of talked about this in later rounds of the game, but you had the information of what you handed each player to your left and your right. So you knew what you gave them. You know that, you know, they can't take that out of your hand once you've given it to them. They have to play that card in some way. And so I think that was kind of, for me, I feel like my whole game revolved around that knowledge and trying to use that knowledge to my advantage. It was very challenging, and, you know, it wasn't my favorite trick-taking game, but I did enjoy thinking about the different ways to use that knowledge to my advantage, I guess, was kind of, I guess that's where I fall. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah, I also, like, I played terribly. I had the worst score by a mile. But I agree with Christina that there are a lot of, I thought, interesting things to consider in playing it. This was like the second or third time I'd played Bottle Imp, and I think I looked it up and it had been 8 years since the last one, so I did not remember it at all. But I remember enjoying it, and I also remember that we definitely played it at 3, so maybe any future plays I'll have will be at 3, and maybe that'll reveal itself to be, as people have said, a much better count. But even at our 4-player count, even though I did terribly, I enjoyed the ways that it made you sort of consider things.
You froze
there, Mark?
Oh, I'm here.
Lost
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just talked about the game. I just basically said that I was recording the whole time, and I basically said that I agreed with Christina for the most part, even though I did terribly at it.
There's one aspect of this that seems to be like, hey, where it's shining the most, which is, okay, can you grab the bottle? Can you score a bunch of points and then pass it off to someone at just the right time? And the times when you're able to pull that off feel good, but I think to Kellen's point, a lot of the time it feels not really in your control as much as you'd like it to be. That was kind of my overall takeaway. So it's like it working the way I think it wants to felt strong, but that was pretty rare.
Yeah, I think some of it is also my expectation. This game has been, I think, came out in like the 90s, and so even when I first got back into board games, I think there were sort of 4 or 5 trick takers that everybody talked about, like Moo, Bargain Hunter, and this one as one that I had to try, and like I'd never tried it. A new edition came out, like this is the time to try it, and I'm like, I waited since the 90s. I was 5 years old. I've been waiting for this since I was 5. Let down at the con. That is Bottle Imp.
All right. The Vale of Eternity is what we're talking about next. This is a drafting tableau builder. The little creatures that you're drafting are basically Pokemon cards. They're very cute. No, they are mythical creatures. They're mythical creatures from around the world. This game is just adorable, first of all. It is very light. The rules are just like lightning fast to learn. And the game works, each round goes in 3 phases. There's a snake draft as the first part. An array of cards are randomly set out. There are different types of cards that you get to choose between. And this is a very combo-rific game. So it might be a lot of people were specializing in specific colors, so specific types of animals or types of cards. And those would work together, you know, as the game went. You'd build up your tableau and you would just end with these crazy combos, getting you a bunch of money and points and everything. But essentially the first part is you just draft in a snake draft fashion, and then you get to take your actions, which you could, I don't remember all the terms, you could summon, you could tame. Your goal is to tame these creatures and add them to your tableau. So you can either add them to your tableau for a cost, or you can sell them immediately. You don't even have to take them into your hand. You can take them into your hand, you can build them to your tableau, or you can sell them before, just say that I want that and then sell it just to get money to do other actions with. So this was a very cute game. What did everyone think? Or I guess you guys all had already played it before.
Well, I had only played it before very briefly at Dice Tower West in their promo room, so I didn't really have that much experience with it. But I really, really, really enjoyed our play of it this time around. You know, for as light as the game is, it is, as you said, like the core of it is like the combo-rificness of it. And it's just really fun to have these cards out in front of you and try to devise some way, like, okay, if I get this card now, or like I've already had this card played, or I have this card in my hand, and it, you know, actually it really pairs well with that card. So if I can get these 2 cards working together and synergizing, I can get points. And there's like a couple of different strategies. Like you can have it where you build like a really simple engine and you trickle in points, or you can build up for like a really big score toward the end of the game if the game lasts long enough, because there's like a variable ending. It can end at the end of the 10th round, or if somebody scores 60 points, so you're risking going for that big high score, you know, because you may run out of time. Just a lot of interesting things to think about, but just the wild combinations you can come up with, I just thought was super, super fun.
Yeah, and for it being such a quick game and such a quick learn, it just feels wonderful. It feels very replayable. Anything combo-rific I love, so...
It immediately made me want to go on BGA. You can play it on BGA and get a game of it going there as well.
Yeah, it has that delightful thing, like every round, everyone is just looking at the cards and going, ooh, that could be good, or like, ooh, Mark wants that. And
Mark's going to take, somebody better block that.
Exactly. And because it's just like a very quick once and back snake draft, it's tense. It's like, you know, there are cards that you are afraid that Mark is going to get.
Yeah.
There are cards that you worry that aren't going to make it back to you. Like that draft phase feels very, very, very tense. And the engines that you're building from game to game to game just feel quite different.
I think that's the smartest thing about it, is how painful the draft part is, or how in your face it is, because the tableau builder part is super heads down. I mean, you can attack. There are attack cards in the game, right? But I bought this one right after Gen Con because I knew Christina would like it. And then I brought it to BarrageCon because I knew Christina would like it. And lo and behold, Christina chose Fractured Sky as her game of the con.
I really loved this one, though.
Yep.
And that is the Vale of Eternity.
And finally, we wrapped up the con with our longest game of the convention. This is Shogun. So finally got a chance to play Shogun. This was from back in 2006 and designed by Dirk Henn. There's a lot going on with Shogun. As I've mentioned, it was the longest game we played. It is an area control fighty game. And speaking of fighty, that aspect of it is sort of like where the gimmick is, where the, you know, if Shogun is known for anything, it's for this, which is the cube tower. The way it works basically is if you ever get into a fight with another army, you take all your cubes, the attacking cubes, and you take all the defending cubes. So let's say like I'm fighting Christina and I have 5 cubes attacking and she has 8 cubes defending, and you throw them all in a dice tower that is designed to catch some of the cubes. Therefore, like not all the same cubes that you put in are going to come out. And you see how many attacking cubes came out and how many defending cubes came out. Each one cancels out the other. So if like 4 of mine came out and 6 of hers came out, my 4 die, 4 of hers die, and that leaves 2 left. And those are the armies that are left in the piece of land in question. That is the biggest.
But more likely, if I put 8 if I put 8 pieces in and Mark put 5 pieces in, then only 3 of my pieces would come out. 7 of his pieces would come out.
Yeah, that's the thing. So Kellen asked me before I think we started playing, like what I thought it would be like or what my thoughts of the game were. I forget exactly what the question was, but I told him that I thought that it was sort of going to come down to the dice tower, or the cube tower, I should say, and that it would be a source of like a lot of excitement, but also probably a lot of like bad feelings because of how random it was going to be, because of, the fact that even if you put a lot of cubes in, they may not all come out, or you may put a few cubes in and expect to lose or expect to be defeated by your opponent, and then all of a sudden all these cubes that were in there come out. They may come out in unopportune times. Like there's a lot of randomness that I thought was going to be from the cube tower that was going to be both beneficial and negative, and that's what ended up happening. Like it was a source of joy and frustration throughout the course of the game. But before we like sort of get into that, which I think is going to be the crux of our conversation, I thought there was a lot of other interesting things about it. The way that you take your actions is there are 10 actions that are going to be played every single round, and the order that the actions are going to occur are sort of randomized, and you only know the order of half of them initially, and you are sort of face down deciding where the 10 different actions are going to be taking place around the lands that you own. It has a very interesting, I think, action selection and action resolution mechanism. The rest of it's pretty standard, like you're moving armies around, you're getting rice to feed your armies, you're getting gold to buy more armies and to buy buildings, which are your main sources of scoring. But again, the crux of the game is the cube tower. What do you guys think of Shogun?
I think 1/3 of the way through the game, I was elated and thought, this is my perfect area control game, because so much of that area control part of it was El Grande adjacent, very simple action sort of planning where you can know some of it, but you can't map out all of it, which I really love. It's like, oh, am I going to get my treasure before I can pay for more troops? And like, you don't always know when the attacks are going to happen. So that fuzziness was cool. And then the cube tower happened. And there's a couple of really specific things. I think the promise of the cube tower is actually cool, which is that like, if you think it's like dice combat or card combat, or you just get screwed by dice, there's no way for the game to make up for that. You could just roll bad over and over again. But the cube tower, like literally the promise of a cube tower is that eventually all of your stuck pieces will come out and then you will win big. I think, Neelan, you said like dice with memory or something like that, which I find apt. And that was the promise of Shogun.
And then Kellen, just like every battle, just got so screwed with the cubes that were coming out. And then, like Mark mentioned, your cubes can just get flushed at really inopportune times, and then it's like that memory that is supposed to help you in future fights is just gone. It's like, well, there go all of the cubes that were stuck in the tower. I just like lost them for a stupid reason, like defending a place that I didn't even care about defending, or whatever it might be. And that was very challenging. The memory did not actually remember in your favor most of the time.
Yeah, because the weird quirk of that tower, right, is like when they come out, those troops now all show up on that territory that you were defending or attacking, which may not be remotely where you need them to be. So you've built them all up for this like grand attack somewhere on one side of the board, and then they show up on the defense on the other side of the board. And like some of that is just entirely out of your control in a way that's pretty dumb, but novel too. Like I think it never wasn't fun to engage with the cube tower, but like the way that it swayed the flow of the game just felt pretty arbitrary.
It's like it was like we realized that you may actually want to attack somewhere and where you don't want to be, or you don't care about it strategically, so that you can adjust the ratio of what's happening in the cube tower to win the battle that you actually want to win. And like it actually sounds more coherent now than during the game, where it was like, this makes no sense. This is entirely arbitrary, but it just weird. Yeah. And then there are other stupid things. This is like divided up Japan into like more regions than I've ever seen in an area control game. And they're probably authentic to Japan, but the board was also like longer than any board from this era I've ever seen. And then you're like looking at reference charts of like, where are my 10 locations? And then you literally need to look at the card to show you where they are on the map. I did not know that Bichen was a region of Japan until I played Shogun, but that is in fact a region.
I think my favorite part of the game was the same thing that Kellen already mentioned earlier, which was just the way that the actions played out. I thought that was very, very fun. Where at the very beginning, we're all just sitting there looking at all of our regions, all of our cards in our hand and deciding, okay, what do I want from this region this turn? Based on the limited information I have about in what order things will happen this turn. Making those decisions all at the beginning just felt really novel. And I also like when decisions are restricted a little bit because I am prone to analysis paralysis. So this is like, okay, I can't figure that out and that's okay. I'm going to either pass this one or like, I know I'm not going to have enough money. So I'm going to do this for that and this for that. And so like having that information ever at the beginning of every single round and then making all of your decisions and then just like playing them out in the turn order was really fun. And it was almost like by the time you got to the last action, you're like, I don't remember what I was going to do for this. But then right. you see the property, or sorry, you see the card, see your region, and you're like, oh, that's right. And it either is great or it's like, yeah, I actually can't do this now, and that's okay. So that was a really fun part of it for me.
I thought there were so many good parts. We've already talked about them, like the action selection, the order, the hidden information, even the cube tower. For its faults, I still think it's again a novel, interesting part of the game. I just wish the game wasn't so long. I mean, I think if this game could be half its length, I think it would be again just like one of my favorite games of all time. As it is, you can't get these big swings, and it is a game that was 2 hours plus whatever. So just a lot of really really great parts, but in the end, I just think it's a little too long for all it is.
It did feel like we all were enjoying the first half a lot more than the second half. Like year one, it kind of felt like we were all excited about it and we all had this plan and like the plan was kind of working. And then I just feel like everything fell apart in the second half.
And that is Shogun. And that is our final game. That is going to do it. Well, that did it for BarrageCon. We've all gone our separate ways, and we will never see each other ever again. No
game of the con for you.
Yep. Just what's the opposite? The worst game of the con? Bottle Imp.
If you had to choose?
Nope.
Your favorite game of the con?
Unwilling.
Oh, boy.
It was a tough year.
And on that note, thank you all. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I will say, real quick, it was a sheer delight to hang out with all of you again. And it's criminal that we do it as seldom as we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
lovely
an
weekend.
Absolutely lovely weekend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lots of fun games and also Bottle Imp.
There is something. Oh, sorry.
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go for it.
No, I want to say. No, I want to know what you're going to say about Bottle Imp now.
No, that was it. That was the end of the sentence.
Oh, I was thinking about this while it was happening, which like there is something so incredible about waking up and like all you have to do today is play games and go to dinner. Like it just like it's almost like that feeling that is so hard to recapture as an adult of like a summer vacation when you're a kid or a winter break when you're a kid and like you don't have any responsibilities for that one day at least, and you just get to like literally wake up and play. Like how incredible is that? Like that so rarely happens as an adult, and it's just so special that we got to have that weekend together.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yep.
Kellen, hard disagree.
No, it's great except for the game.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you to Heart Society for our intro and outro music, What's in Your Mind, Kid? If you want to weigh in on any of the games we spoke about or in general, talk to us in the community, please come over to boardgamebarrage.com/discord and hang out and chat with us. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye. So you're essentially trying to win these different regions in this game by having the highest bid after doing a series of actions. So it's so distracting. Misty, go up. There you go. Okay. Yeah, you wanted to be on the podcast. What tank is she? Oreo tank?
Yeah.
The Oreo tank. Okay, Misty, say something in the microphone. Did you hear that?
Did not hear anything.
She did a little boop, a little nose.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry. Oh, goodness, I get so distracted.
Off the record. Off the record.